In the name of Allah, the Beneficent and Merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. I am Kareem Allah Muhammad, the representative of Allah in the person of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and of his Messiah, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I greet you in the words of peace and paradise of Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation. We're going to move very swiftly through this because we have a few subjects we want to cover. I want to pick up from where I left off last week, talking about the domestic life of the Messiah. We have to spend some time on this subject because of the monumental events that we will be facing very shortly. There's several levels that you can fight on. We can get low down and dirty if we need to. Sometimes we have to, but most times we need to elevate, because the objective of the domestic life is to bring a people who has been no people along and put them where God wants them to be, and that is on the top. So I'm going to do some reading from this book in the defense of the domestic life of the Messiah. I'm also going to refer to one or two other books, but I'm hoping that you would have your antennas up and that you would find interest in what I'm going to read, because brothers and sisters, we must do much reading, particularly as we go into the kingdom of God. It requires that we become scientists and scholars. So there's some discipline that we need to have when reading. He's already given us a truth that transcends the foolishness of this world, but that truth is not without us having to dig deeper into it and to do much reading in order to grasp concepts and certain truths so it can marinate on our minds and in our hearts. So we're going to start again with the description of the Messiah. What is the Messiah? Who is the Messiah? And then move into what is the domestic life. Again, we're going to reiterate these, probably most of these presentations, because that's something we have to grasp very soundly. So the Messiah, as the Redeemer and Deliverer of God's chosen people, possesses the spirit, wisdom, knowledge, and power of Allah. He is predestined to carry out this function during and extending beyond the Messianic era. His function involves preparing Allah's chosen people to fulfill the Messianic work prophesied of them through his promise to Abraham, as recorded in Genesis, the 22nd chapter, 18th verse, quote, "And in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed." Now we see a little bit of the nations of the earth being blessed just by the great talent coming up from this enslaved people, the black people of America, the original people of the Western Hemisphere. So the Messiah, as we said several weeks ago, and as many of you know, comes up out of this people who is in bondage for 400 years. You can't find in no history of this world where a people other than black people of America were in bondage for 400 years. And after that 400th year period, which ended in 1955, then God comes and he begins to do the work of redeeming this fallen people. Now we know that God came in the person of Master Fard Muhammad in 1930. There's much to that differences in the 25 years that we'll take up on another time. Now, what is the domestic life? In one sense, the domestic life involves the Messiah's polygamous marriage. Most profoundly, however, the domestic life encompasses the protection, reformation, and elevation of women through divine knowledge and governance. This universal governance features the leadership of women with the Messiah in establishing the everlasting kingdom of God. Again, it encompasses the protection, reformation, and elevation of women, not with knowledge from Caucasian people or from the enemy or from the synagogue of Satan, but with divine knowledge coming from God himself. Because no nation rises higher than the condition of its woman. And this is why we're in the quagmire that we are in this country, because the condition of women has been made very, very low. So somebody who accuses the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan because he gives guidance to let some of these great women of entertainment know that they serve as role models for women. So they have to be conscientious, if they choose to be, of how they're goaded or how they maybe voluntarily go into presenting themselves. There's nothing wrong with a man who is our father, a man who is up in his 80s. So he's not somebody who's a little kid. He's all of our fathers, and he's old enough to be people's great-great-grandfather. Well, I shouldn't say that, but you get the point. You know, he's a man of much, much experience and wisdom. He sees beyond what we see. And sometimes, you know, brothers and sisters, when we get finished acting a fool for a certain period, you know, in our foolishness or in our career, then later on we look back. See, some of those sisters will look back 30 years from now when somebody pops a video in of you looking like, you know, you just walked off the beach nude and there's a whole bunch of people screaming your name. You know, right now that may seem like it inspires people, but later on when we get a little wisdom, we may regret some of the things that we have done, even though at that time we may not have been aware that we will feel this way 20 to 30 years later. This is why Solomon says, serve God in your youth, so we won't pile up a stack of regrets only to anguish over them later, because they won't pull back those videos, they won't pull back those pictures. You will go into your grave being personified as something that they desire. And when I say they, I mean the enemies. So our Father, the Messiah, and I say our Father because of his season, experience, his age, and he's certainly old enough to be my father since he has children older than me. I'm talking about the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. As a fatherly man, he's giving counsel to his spiritual children. And for the enemy to come up, some of them, you know, of course, our open enemy is the Caucasian people, really the synagogue of Satan. But for them to accuse him of misogyny, like what kind of name is that anyway? I read, Brother Richard did a wonderful job in the final call in defense of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Why should we even raise that word up? See, our mortal enemies, they create words so they can put forth concepts that really don't have any base in it. How does any man hate women when men are born of women? I mean, we may have our differences. How can women truly hate men when they're born through the agency of a man? So when we get right down to the core of things, it's just a bunch of baloney, but they mask it in these terms and concepts, and we take hold of it and run with it. Now, if you want to talk about the hatred of women, well, what's the phobia for the hatred of dropping bombs on people? What's the phobia? The name of that when you rape and mass rape women, when you go around the earth and pillage people's lands. See, we will hope that you will have a phobia against that rather than making up something to put a scourge on a man that you know has already demonstrated his love for women and that he holds women in the highest esteem because he has given rebirth to the MGT class. And again, as we said last week, the proof is always before us. Now, I want to just mention something that we covered last week. Last week was pretty intense. Had to be a little bit careful because I want to make sure that you're with me as we go on this journey in defense of the domestic life of the Messiah. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, as with Prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah, were ordered to take wives. They were ordered into polygamy. That is the point that we want to make. Who ordered them? Allah orders his Messiah. Allah orders his messengers. Now, whether you believe they're messengers or not, or the Messiah or not, that's entirely up to you. We get to believe whatever we want to believe. But I'm speaking from the knowledge of the Holy Quran and the knowledge of the Bible in fulfillment of the prophecies, and actually what's happening right now, not as history books, as many people choose to call them or use them so they can justify acting other than righteous today. Because we can always point back and talk about what somebody else did while we do devilishment right here. Well, one of the areas that we want to cover today is this. Although each of them were married for decades before Allah ordered them to take wives into polygamy, according to the Messianic prophecies in divine order, the science of the originator in his self-creation, in the creation of the universe, everyone is predestined. In this case, those women were predestined before they were even born to be part of the domestic life of the Messiah. We need to understand this. God doesn't work haphazardly. He doesn't shoot from the hips. He does not make up rules as he goes along, although he keeps his options open. He has the book that he writes in advance. As we're told by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, we write history in advance, 25,000 years in advance, and then we live out that history. The Holy Quran talks about, all of the writings and what is written in the book, meaning that you and I, we're already written in the book. God knows who's going to be a hypocrite, who's going to be a disbeliever, and who's going to be one of the righteous. That does not mean that we don't have power to change our circumstances, but a lot comes with that. We'll leave it right there for that moment. So in Surah 13 of the Holy Quran, verse 38, I want to say this again. And certainly we sent messengers before thee and appointed for them wives and children. The we is Allah. Continuing. And it is in the power of a messenger to bring a sign except by Allah's permission for every term there is an appointment. Meaning that in this Messianic era, you have people who come and they function in the Messianic function. And when they are given leadership in a certain phase, then Allah appoints for them wives and children to help in that phase of the work. So when we look at the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, we see that occurring in his life. When we look at the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, we see that occurring in his life. And in several messages, I told you about that reality in my life because I am in the place of he and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad among you. Again, you may not believe it, but we're going to cover certain things, certain aspects of that to make it more clear to you. So let me just take a moment and read from this book. It's from the 4th chapter, volume 1. And again, the objective is to just bring clarity. I want to take us up a little bit more. Not that I'm up way high above you, but I want to bring this subject up a little further as Allah has revealed it to me for us to go further. By understanding that everyone involved in the domestic life was predestined for the Messianic mission, insulates each person from insecurity. How so? Each person can faithfully accept and embrace Allah's view of the other. Again, the reality of predestination moves beyond the contemporary setting and extends to the origin of creation. Again, when we look at, I'm going to pause here, the Messiah, in the beginning was the Word, as the verse goes, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. So some of the prophecies place the Messiah right at the beginning of creation. I go into a little bit of it in this book, because what we're looking at is the perfection of creation, the idea that the originator had when he made this creation, that it was not perfect enough for you and me, but in his own estimation of his own mind, being an all-wise producer and creator of all of this, he had other plans in mind to move it forward. Well, the Messiah is at the beginning of those plans, which is the idea that a man and a people will come along and Allah will use them to perfect the universe. And that's the black people of America, the original people of the Western Hemisphere. You could take it or let it alone, but I got to share this with you. I'm hoping that it's interesting to you. Now let's continue. The Messianic mission is consecrated in the originator's goal for perfection, in the establishment of the eternal kingdom of peace. Each person, each of the wives, were predestined to advance the originator's goal. So although the first spouse may have been with the man 30 years or 20 years before Allah ordered him to take another wife or other women as wives, each of them were predestined to be in the place where they are. So when you look at it from that vantage point, can we say that the woman who was with the man 20 to 30 years prior, is above the ones who come later? I think not. Everyone comes with a particular purpose at a particular time, but they were all envisioned and predestined to be where they are. We're talking about divine things, divine work. We're not talking about, walking down the street and I'm going to decide to buy a taffy, or, off the top of my head, I want a soda. We're not dealing with that. Allah plans eons into the future, and we're part of a plan or doing labor that will affect people eons into the future. Divine work, not devilishment, because that's on its way out. Now let me continue reading. Again, I have to print it off here, but it's in this book. I just printed some pages so I wouldn't have to thumb through the book. The success of polygamy rests in the understanding of marriage that each person involved brings to the marriage. That is how well they understand the purpose of and the expected benefits and challenges associated with marriage, including polygamy. This knowledge bears on their ability to resolve the problems that arise in the marriage. They will be able to depend on each other to sustain and improve the marriage and to accomplish the goals of the marriage. So again, in the Messianic era, the Messiah and his wives, they're there and exist because there's goals involved. God advances civilization through their labor. So again, the marriage has purpose, and understanding that purpose is important for each person involved. I ended by saying this requires the cooperation of everyone involved, extending to the children. Now, I have a few more paragraphs to read. Now, despite their acceptance of the truth associated with the domestic life, for example, that they were predestined, the challenge of wrapping their minds around these realities yet exists. Just because we accept something doesn't mean we understand it fully. That evolves. Gaining comfort with acceptance occurs gradually and involves significant contemplation. We got to think about it. And sometimes we have to think about things without everybody being in our ear. And sometimes when we are asked to do something in private, we can't go and broadcast it to everybody, or we may have a friend that we confide in and we're asking that friend, what does that friend think? Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but that friend is not in your shoes. So you have a journey and I have a journey that we have to go through in order to connect those dots so we can come into the realization that our place is where it is. Now, when you see me say that I represent the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and that when he goes to the wheel, not even when he goes, even now, I am before you because I'm to guide you further into the truth that was brought to us by Master Fard Muhammad, which is now being given to us in a significant way through the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Well, I connected some dots, and I know what I know because I took time to contemplate on it, and because it's much more real than maybe some of you believe or realize, but it's not really up to you to believe it or realize it. No messenger of God is kicking down the door to get somebody to agree or to believe in them. The Holy Quran says that Allah knows that thou art his messenger. So the work will prove to be true. Because at the end of the day, as they say, is all about showing that Allah is with us with the work that we do. Let us continue. Again, it requires them to examine their lives individually in as much detail as possible, going back as far as possible. They need to trace the footprints and connect the dots, which substantiate the truth of this grand reality in their lives. You know, that's, again, we can always go back and talk about what other people have done and hip, hip, hooray. But when we're faced with those kinds of decisions and there's no bailout, God shows you enough for you to make your own decision. Mother Tainetta Muhammad, in one of her articles that was published a few weeks ago, talked about each of us, I'm just paraphrasing, standing up to confront the reality that Allah is showing you. That's all we're asked to do. But if we want to bring others along or get the approval of others, when we know there's no approval coming, then we become stagnated and we don't fulfill the purpose for why we were born into this world. Now, these connections fuel self-realization. Who are you? Thereby enabling them to gain the confidence required to truly accept and embrace their destiny. There's yet more. Self-realization involves deep internal analysis of the activities in one's life. Accepting oneself can be challenging, especially when learning that one's place is in the inner circle of the Supreme Being in his Christ. Now that's for the domestic life, but that's also for Black people generally. Part of our problem is that we don't believe that God came to us to put us on top. So when a man like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says, I met with God and he said, you're on top. We got a problem with that. See, that shows that the synagogue of Satan has done a good job on us. The Caucasian slave masters has really dirtied our minds for somebody to resist another person telling you that you're supposed to be on top. So we mocked and scorned the Honorable Elijah Muhammad for telling us that we're the original people and we're on top. But the bottom line with that is that he had to also expose our enemy, because in the last days it says that the man of sin would be revealed. So maybe some of us could accept, I'm more than a Negro, a jigaboo, a coon and a shine. I might be, a man first before I become God in person. But most people have problems with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad revealing that the Caucasian people are the people written in the book, styled as Lucifer, the devil, and Satan. And yet their works say that they're Lucifer, the devil, and Satan, at least when it comes to us and everybody else on the planet. That does not mean that they have not done some good. In some ways, they have set some examples that man is God. But in much of what they have done has always been tormenting, murder, and pillaging. So that man of sin has been revealed, and Black people had a problem with that. So you rejected the Honorable Elijah Muhammad because you were offended because somebody said something bad about your master. Again, if we take the medicine, we can come out of that self-hatred and the fear of the Caucasian people. So, accepting oneself is challenging when somebody says that you are far more than what you thought you were. The glory goes to God. We're not to boast because he doesn't like the boasting of anybody. Now, let's move a bit further. How difficult is this to swallow, especially for people who have been made to think very little of themselves as a result of living under the rule of their mortal enemies who influence them to devalue themselves? This is a major challenge. Why is that? Now, we got all kinds of evidence, brothers and sisters, that we've been self-devaluing each other as well as ourselves. Just by the way women dress, the way that brothers fight at the drop of a hat over something that's just senseless, the way we undermine each other, the abuse we do to ourselves shows that the mind that the Caucasian slave master has put in us is one that makes us devalue ourselves personally and another black person that we're looking at. Now, we can talk about what we need to do to get over that. And a lot of people do that. Black people need to do this, need to do that, but we need a truth and a teaching to help us along. That's why God came, because we were not able to do it on our own without somebody transforming our thinking. And this is what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's teachings do and have done for many people. Now, the black people of America have been made to think nothing of themselves. And our commitment to religious worship has now overcome the social systems that drive self-abnegation or self-negation down our throats. So we're cheering and herding over the bleachers and doing whatever we want to do in our religious services. But when we come out of those doors, even before we come out of those doors, what do we face here in this country? We face hatred from our open and mortal enemies. We face an education that makes us of low self-esteem and hate ourselves. Meanwhile, we're given all of the stimulus that makes us to feel that white people are superior. So despite all of the preaching, all of the singing, that has not overturned the self-hatred and the abuse that we have for each other. And it's not just the gangbanger or the sister on the corner, it's the brothers and sisters in America's corporations. You know, how well do you treat another brother or sister coming in when you have the ability to give that brother a job or that sister a job or to do justice by them in some way? I know some of you don't want to show love for your own kind because you're afraid that the white man or girl is going to be upset with you for hiring your own, but they don't feel that way when they hire their own. They don't give a damn what you think. They'll hire their whole family if they could, but they got rules against that, I think. So why should we be apprehensive about saying, well, this brother is more qualified than all the white people over here and he deserves the job? No, some of us will not even hire that. We'd rather take somebody who is less qualified because we don't want to feel as though we're being one-sided, hiring our own people. No, you hire the one who's qualified. And if that's your people, and the majority of them are, particularly in corporate America, then you have a right to hire based on what you know to be the actual facts and not based on your fear of your mortal enemies. Now, therefore, it is always easier for us to believe that it should be someone else because it can't be true. I can't be that important to God. I can't be a messenger of God. I can't be walking with the messenger of God. I can't be a disciple of the Messiah. I can't be, that important to God. So it gotta be somebody else. It gotta be somebody white. It gotta be the state of Israel over there that's the chosen people, not us, even though we know how they got there since 1948 from Europe. We got the history to show that they're not nowhere remotely close to fulfilling any of the Messianic prophecies. Yet I have some Christians argue against me that they believe that they're the chosen people of God. Won't you wake up and read history. They don't even believe that. But that's how we've been made to think. It's too good to be true. We look around waiting for the house to fall down because we just been that tormented that things are going good, but it can't go good for long. It got to come crashing down. That's the kind of tormenting our mortal enemies have placed us. So we look for things to go sour. And if things don't go sour, we make them go sour. Now, that ends that point. So the wives of the Messiah, they're predestined to be in that relationship for the furtherance of the kingdom of God through their labor and, of course, through the offspring that they produce. All right? Now let's move to the next subject. There are no fiefdoms in the Nation of Islam, not in the lost kingdom, not upon the coming of Master Fard Muhammad. We don't have royal families. The mother of the faithful is the mother of the faithful. She is not a first lady. We don't adopt the language of this world because as a mother of the faithful, the wives of Muhammad, of the Messiah, they are the mother of anybody who is of the faith, no matter where they are on earth. We can choose to call them first ladies if we want to, but I think that cheapens the role because a first lady does not necessarily equate to being a mother, a guide, a counselor of those who believe and even those who don't believe. This is what we have in the wives of the Messiah. But we don't have any monarchies in the Nation of Islam. We should know that. Many of you may not be aware of some of the history of Master Fard Muhammad, who the Honorable Elijah Muhammad represented as the fulfillment of God coming in person in the last days. The Revelation speaks of 24 elders. He brought clarity to that by saying the 24 elders in Revelations are the 24 scientists who write history. 23 do the writing, the 24th acts as the judge of those writings. So we write history 25 years in advance, then we decide what we want to see happen, and then we live out that history. This is according to the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Now, the 24 scientists, they have kept that function in their households. When the Savior, Master Fard Muhammad, was born of God, born of the scientists, he broke that 24 elder council in some aspects. When he came and chose the Honorable Elijah Muhammad from among us to put him on top so that we as a people could be put on top in our rightful place. Now, there's much to that I'm not going to cover here. But if he breaks the cycle and does not produce a son and makes him follow in his footsteps, then why would the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, which he did not do? Of course, Wafuddin in the history of the Nation of Islam had his, effort to take the Nation of Islam at that time on the course that he envisioned. But in fulfillment of prophecy, he was not to do that. We knew that the Peter and the Aaron of the book would be the one who would step in once Jesus went away. And he would be gone for 3 years, and then his faith would return and he would strengthen his brother. And I'm talking about the scripture because we are in the scriptures right now. And then he would go on to do the Messianic assignments that he is responsible for doing. That is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And it's the same situation here. It continues. So this is why some people have a problem, because you felt that it would be somebody who you thought would have this responsibility. We all have our responsibilities, and there's greatness among all of us. I'm just making my responsibility known, but God don't function off of what we think should be or who we think should be. See, this is why murder creeps up when you have a change of leadership, because people see they see what's being left and they want to wrangle over it, argue over it, and they go after each other's throat for leadership, but God chooses the leader and he knows best where to place his message. Well, God is the leader. We who are messengers of God, we just follow and obey him, as I read. It's not for a messenger to bring a sign. God directs the messenger and the Messiah every step of the way. I want to make that point clear. So we don't have royal families and fiefdoms. He called all of the original people the descendants of the originator of the heavens and the earth. So if we want to put a royal family anywhere, then all of the original people are of the royal family of God. Now, there's a verse that brings this home. Surah 53, verse 32, it reads, "And he knows best when he brings you forth from the earth and when you are embryos in the wombs of your mothers." He meaning God, Allah. "So ascribe no purity to yourselves. He knows best who guards against evil." So God again knows where to place his message. It's not for me or for anyone else to decide the responsibility of continuing the guidance of the people through the divine teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Now, there's another verse, and I'm heading somewhere. A brother asked me a question of why I changed the greeting, and I told him I would explain it in this message. So let me hustle on because I know my time is becoming short. Surah 43, verse 30 and 32 reads, "And when the truth came to them, they said, 'This is enchantment, and surely we are disbelievers in it.' And they say, 'Why was not this Quran revealed to a man of importance in the two towns?' And again, do they apportion the mercy of thy Lord?" That's the question. Again, do we decide who God is going to use in certain functions? No, we don't. But he continues, "We apportion out among them their livelihood and the life of this world, and we exalt some of them above others in rank, that some of them may take others in service." So the Messiah and the messengers, they're here to serve the people. They're not here for hand claps, for accolades. And certainly I have gotten no hand claps or accolades, but they're here to bear the brunt of scorn and mockery, as all messengers were, but to continue to move the people where God desires them to be. And that takes much, much discipline. So now, one more verse, just trying to let you know where we are right now. You got to know, so you won't have any confusion about what's going to happen and what is happening. In Surah 36, verses 14 and 17, it reads, "And set out to them a parable of the people of the town when apostles came to it. When we sent to them two, they rejected them both. Then we strengthened them with a third. So they said, 'Surely we are sent to you.' They said, 'You are only mortals like ourselves, nor has the Beneficent revealed anything to you. You only lie.' They said, 'Our Lord knows that we are surely sent to you, and our duty is only a clear deliverance of the message.'" Now, I'm that third. I'm coming straight at you. Of the two that was sent, one is on his way to the wheel. The first one is the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. The second one is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who are alive and well and in doing their function and in power. Now, some people may say, well, we thought Master Fard Muhammad is the third. Is one of the third of the three. That's not so. How can a man who, as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, could destroy the whole universe, leave nothing but himself, and create a whole new universe? Who sends a man like that? How does he break the council of the 24 elders or scientists? No, in our lessons, it talks about, so we sent them a messenger. So here's how it goes. God comes in fulfillment of prophecy. Habakkuk talked about it. Isaiah mentions it. It's mentioned in the New Testament. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad represented Master Fard Muhammad as the coming of God, not as a messenger or an apostle, per se. He did say Mahdi and Messiah, but that's different. He held those functions until he created or made the ones who would fulfill or function in those capacities. We covered that in a message that may not be available right now. But that's not Master Fard Muhammad. That's my point. So I'm just, again, making it clear to you that I am in that function. Now, are you boasting, Brother Kareem Allah Muhammad? Hell no. I have been tried and you will be tried. I mean, to tell you the truth, we all had envisioned doing other things before God reveals what his idea and plan is. And then we try to obey. Now, last but not least, I don't have the book with me, but in the teachings 2.0 of the tweets from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan on page 177, you can check it if you want to, a question is asked of him. Have you prepared a legacy plan? Will there be a successor chosen by you? And his answer in part is, I am sure there will be a successor, and that successor will not be chosen by God. Some people believe there's going to be some kind of council. There are many councils. That's how you get a difference of opinion, different opinions in order to advance ideas. You need more brain power, or you need more opinions from people. God is the ultimate brain power. And once he reveals it to his messenger or Messiah, then that's brain enough to press forward. But there are councils because we need to make decisions. But God does not raise up a council. He raises up a man who is responsible to him. Now, let me deal with why I changed the language, since my time is short. And I hope, you're getting something out of it. And I believe you are. Now, here's a question that came to me by a brother that I have been a Facebook friend of. And I'm not even sure if I know him personally, but Clyde Graham wrote me this text via Facebook. Assalamu alaikum, dear brother. I like that because I have not been called much of that lately. Not dear anything. First, I would like to thank you for your written works. I have learned much and benefited greatly from them. I was listening to your video messages and I noticed a change in your language. You stated you are the representative of Allah in the person of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and his Messiah, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Please explain this language change and also why you make no mention of Master Fard Muhammad in your opening. Now, I do make mention of let me finish. Thank you in advance for your time. If you choose to respond on this matter, and may Allah continue to bless you and your family. That's a great question, because I didn't open up without knowing what I'm saying. So let me explain because it'll show us where we are as well by the grace of Allah. And again, I have it written, not particularly in this book, but in volume 2, which will be released, inshallah, before the month of October is out. And it's something because I had already had it written up with that very question. Where is Master Fard Muhammad? So, some may ask, where is Master Fard Muhammad in all of this? Because in this chapter, I'm explaining the elevation in the function of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and also the function of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Now, we can just go straight at it with the words that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said to him, the words that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. These words were, brother, God has made me to take his place, has made me, and I am making you to take mine. making. That means that he's on the process of being made to take the place of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who is already made to take the place of God. What we don't know is when those two things happen. And when those two things happen, that will change how we relate to them and function, and even by name if we choose to. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad also said, when he was asked by, I can't think of the brother's name offhand, the Dean of the Ministers, Lucius Bey, who was a Seventh-day Adventist minister at the time, asked the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, how do you know that the man you met is God? He just answered straight up, because he made me all up into himself. So we knew, so with that, not we knew, but with that answer, he's more than Messenger Muhammad, even at that time. God spends 3.5 years with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, tutoring him as an apprentice. Anybody who knows an apprenticeship should know that once you come through, that then you are to be what that apprenticeship is hands-on. It's not just all theory. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad hid himself because it was not, first of all, he said, it took him 40 years to understand his mission. He had to grow into understanding aspects of it. That didn't mean that he didn't know what it was. To know something and to understand it is two different things. Now, Brother Kareem, how do you know these things that you're saying? You speak as though you are, talking on behalf of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I'm exactly doing that because I know what he's feeding me, because that's what he's doing. You can't represent a man and he not guide you into telling the people his thoughts. Again, whether you believe it or not is immaterial to me. This has been a journey and I have learned much. And one of the things that I've always knew, I didn't have to learn this. I've always knew you keep your eye focused on the goal and you try to keep your heart as clear from bitterness as possible. Because again, when it's all said and done, we all get lowered into the ground. My focus, by the help of Allah, is to do God's will, and that should be the focus of everybody. And it is the focus of many, many people. Now, let's answer this question. Where is Master Fard Muhammad in all of this? Because if you make a man to take your place, then where do you go? Let's just think about that point. God has made me to take my place. God has made me to take his place. Well, why? Where is Master Fard Muhammad, who came representing himself as the great Mahdi, Allah in person, the supreme being, the one whose wisdom exceeds the first God? What does he do now since he made a man to take his place? That's a good question. Some of it is answered here in the Holy Quran. So in Surah 3, verse 33, 35, it states, truly Allah chose Adam and Noah and the descendants of Abraham and the descendants of Amran, above the nations. Offspring one of another, and Allah is hearing, knowing. When a woman of Amran said, my Lord, I vow to thee what is in my womb to be devoted to thy service. So accept it from me. Surely only thou art the hearing, the knowing. So Amran, A-M-R-A-N. Who is Amram? Now, again, Surahs 33, 66, and 3 mainly are of the domestic life. They cover the Messiah's domestic life in part. 66 and 33 covers it entirely. 3 goes into it because it talks about the birth of Jesus as the Messiah and the work that he does in his messianic work. So the title of Surah 33 is called The Family of Amran. That's the title of the surah, The Family of Amran. That's kind of unusual. So who's Amram? I think that's the point, or that's the question most of us want to know. Who is Amram? If that surah is entitled The Family of Amram, well, it says, In Maulana Muhammad Ali's commentary, Amram of the Holy Quran is the same as Amram of the Bible. The descendants of Amram are Moses and Aaron. We learn in Exodus that Moses and Aaron are brothers. And the Holy Quran also says that. Well, their father is Amram. In the fulfillment of that prophecy, we have always understood that Moses was representative in part by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, really in fullness by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Some aspects, of course, are representative of Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, but certainly we understand Moses to be the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, because a man like Moses would be raised up in the last days who would deliver a people, according to the prophecies. We always knew, or not always, but we know for quite some time that the Aaron of the Bible is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. That has been made very clear to us. Maybe not to you, because you may have a little catching up to do on the prophecies and its fulfillment. I just inspire you or encourage you to just go on and pursue that study, but we got to move on, and then you can get where you need to get to and then catch up. So Moses became the founder of the Israelite law and Aaron the head of the Israelite priesthood. So we look at the priesthood of the Messiah. Weeks ago I told you there's Messiah ben Joseph, Messiah ben David. There's a Messiah of Israel. There's a Messiah of Aaron. The Messiah of Aaron, in the depiction of the Messianic prophecy, he is responsible for the priesthood. Again, I'm just putting out certain points. And maybe some people may not be much aware of that, but there are many people who are. Now, in Exodus chapter 6, verse 20 of the New International Version, it reads, Amram married his father's sister, Jochebed. Amram married his father's sister. That don't sound like something that's cool. Who bore him Aaron and Moses. Amram lived 137 years. Now, let me just read this just to break it down. I may not be able to get to the other parts that I want to get to, but let me read this just to share with you. I don't like to use a cheap word called breaking it down. So I apologize for that phrase. God is ever revealing his wisdom, and there's more, of course, to that as we go older and mature and as he chooses to reveal more. Now, why would a man marry his father's sister, which is his aunt? Would this not be incest, a form of scandal? Were Moses and Aaron then born through an incestuous relationship? No, this verse is prophetic and therefore must be correctly interpreted. Both sentences in this verse must be explained. In the fulfillment of the prophecies of the Bible, specifically the deliverance of the children of Israel, Moses and Aaron prefigures the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan respectively. Most people in the Nation of Islam agree with that, and some people who've heard the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan over the years agree with that also. This is relatively, again, common knowledge. Amram therefore prefigures Master Fard Muhammad. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us that Master Fard Muhammad was specially prepared by his father from inception to save his people, his father's people, the tribe of Shabazz, the black people of America, which includes the Native Americans. In the fulfillment of verse 20 regarding Amram marrying his father's sister, Jochebed, Master Fard Muhammad has married the original people in the Western Hemisphere, the black people of America. And from them, that marriage, he produced Moses and Aaron. That's the interpretation of the prophecy of that verse, right? Which is the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, respectively. According to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Master Fard Muhammad will live far beyond 137 years. Chapter 6, verse 20 in Exodus says 137 years. He told us, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, that Master Fard Muhammad will live a minimum of 1 year for every year we spend in bondage. That's 400 years. So, men of God can live that long if they're not eating Reese cups and chocolate chip cookies, pork, God forbid, and just the other non-foods that they call foods that we eat, and most of us can get past 75 years of age. But if we follow how to eat to live, eating one meal a day, one meal every other day, and fasting much often or more often, then we will live beyond 100 years. He said the weakest one among us should be able to live at least 100 years. This is the Elijah Muhammad in the book, How to Eat to Live. Well, then, what is meant by Amran living 137 years? The number of years from the birth of Master Fard Muhammad in 1877 to 2014 is 137 years. Why is 2014 significant? Because it marks the end of two phases of the Messianic era. The first 40 years, 35 to 75, and the second 40 years, which came to an end really last year. This is why I had the meeting with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in his suite in Detroit in 2014. Now we know he has a rendezvous with destiny to go on and to be what the Elijah Muhammad has made him and prepared him to be. And that's going to be very soon. I don't know exactly when. God knows that. But most of us know, and he has made it plain in public forums, as clear as possible, that he will be going to the wheel. Okay? So, 2014, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is in the place of Master Fard Muhammad, who's made him like himself. So he is Allah in person. And that's why I mention his name in my opening. But Master Fard Muhammad is mentioned throughout any teaching that any of us give who are members of the Nation of Islam. But we just have to make it clear to you who is in power today. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad has been given authority over the universe. And he has been given authority to destroy or to save anything he chooses to destroy and to save. We're not going to get by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the man that most people mocked and that many black people hate because they misunderstand his relationship with Malcolm X, but because they listen to the haters of black people, period, but especially the haters of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. But it don't matter what you or I think. That's the reality. So you're going to have to deal with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and you will have to deal with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Just telling you, as always, straight up in your face. So if you don't like it, then you need to go do some research so you can come up to, at least entertain what I've just presented to you. Then you may have a chance. What else do you have? What else do we have? We have our slave masters' brand of Christianity, which they concocted in Europe, not even where Jesus was from in Palestine. We just had the Pope roaming around here. What is he, really, when you can trace the start of Christianity back to the beginning of the origin of the papacy? It's right there in front of our face. He does not represent Christ because Christ is represented from among the chosen people of God, and the people in Europe are not the chosen people of God. How long are we as a people going to fall for the same tricks or just go along to get along because we don't want to give things maybe a deeper thought than what they should have and what we should give that subject? I'm just encouraging you to do that. Now, I'm going to so Master Fard Muhammad, he was specially prepared by his father to put his father's people, the tribe of Shabazz, back on top. And he did that task. And the Elijah Muhammad, representing the tribe of Shabazz, which is an ancient tribe going back to the origin of the universe, back on top. Now, that's in the teaching of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and his teaching is very public, and we have many, many messages from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan on that. Now, I'm going to make this one statement, or cover this one area. We touched a little bit on it when we talked about misogyny, the hatred of women, because the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, once, I'm going to say the name, Sister Beyonce. I can't think of the others, Nicki Minaj, and I can't think of the other sister. But you can listen to that interview he did on Hip Hop 1980 or 1987. I can't think of even what that is right offhand, but it's very public. All women need to cover today. As I said weeks ago, this country is plunging into savagery. Last week I talked about 200 and almost 300,000 girls who are now sexually exploited right here in America. It could be people you see every day, but you wouldn't know. That some event happened to them because they're following trends. And this is what the entertainment sisters, or those sisters in entertainment, you need to realize that somebody is following your role model, and you are a role model. Now, we would be upset if the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, went wayward, because we would expect more of him because he's our role model. You have coaches who coach your children that you expect to uphold some level of dignity as you perceive it, but there's straight up, obvious things that are dignifying and things that are not. You would expect them to uphold that because they're dealing with your child. So my son asked me not too long ago, Dad, what would you tell a sister who's very beautiful, but she's exposing herself everywhere? And I told him, well, I would not tell her probably what you would tell her. You would probably be nice. I would probably say something like, if I wanted to say anything, oh, so you just gonna show everybody what you got, even the 5-year-old and the 80-year-old. Why? Why should somebody be walking down the street with their children and they see women halfway naked? Why should a 4-year-old boy and girl see women walking around with everything hanging out? Like, what kind of role model is that? Just think about it. That's all we're asking you, is just to think about it. So in this day and time, women have certainly become commodities for sale, pieces of meat to be exploited, and men are taking advantage of it. They know the legal system's overwhelmed, so most women who are raped or sexually assaulted don't even report it. So in the Holy Quran, the Messiah is ordered by Allah in these words, Surah 33:59, and this is what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is and has been fulfilling in bringing that message to us. O Prophet, tell thy wives and thy daughters and the women of believers to let down upon them their overgarments. This is more proper so that they may be made known and not be given trouble. And Allah is ever forgiving, merciful. Well, why? Well, that can't be Prophet Muhammad, because back during that time, women covered. You were known if you were walking around looking other than covered, because you stand out in a crowd of women who are dressing decently. So it's for this time, because you would need to be made known in a world where women have undressed themselves. Now you have a woman here who looks decent, modest, a woman over here. You might be able to find one way down there, because most women are under the influence of the synagogue of Satan, who enjoys women to walk around, if they could, even butt naked, so they could feel as though, that women are serving me. So you got a bunch of sisters walking down the street, a white man walking towards them. How does he feel? He feels, yes, you are serving me. That's right. That's right. You're serving me. I like your thighs. I like your hips. I may not be able to touch them yet, but I like your bosoms. This is what I made my niggas to look like, walking around uncovered. So they entertain me wherever I am, because these are my sleazy hoe niggers. And I want the whole world to see this. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that they disgraced us, and now we willingly disgrace ourselves. So again, what separates you as a woman of 20 or 30 or 40 years old from the sister who's 12 years old that's dressed in the same way? That's what I tell some brothers when I was doing a little coaching over Del State, who were juniors and seniors in college with their pants hanging halfway down. What is the difference between you dressing like that as a senior in college and a 7th grader in a high school? Where's the maturity level at? Like, can you demonstrate that there's a difference, that you've grown up when you look like the 7th grader? I mean, what is wrong with us? Do we not want to grow up, or are we going to be considered the children of Israel all the days of our lives? Little children. So they give us toys to play with, drugs, alcohol, sex and indecent dressing and, $100 sneaks that we go to war for. Meanwhile, they run the whole world through business and industry based on our labor, but give us little Tonka toys and trinkets so we can play with, like we're in some daggone playpen. No, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Minister Louis Farrakhan, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, they're here to grow us up, but we have to accept their guidance. So I'm asking the sisters, he has covered many lectures, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, on respect for women, the value of women. We do these things because we don't know the value of ourselves, and we lack the knowledge of ourselves, and apparently a whole bunch of money don't cover that gap. Money don't mean that you're knowledgeable, and money does not mean that you're not ignorant. So you can be ignorant of many things and have $1 million, but that ignorance will cost you something in your life, and you'll pay a price for it. I just have a book that I've always said I'm not going to say prefigures, but I knew that this needed to come before I completed the Domestic Life book. Because the hallmark of the Messiah's labor is to bring women up into not only modesty in dress, but modesty in thought. So this book is a testimony of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's teaching. It's called The Power of Modesty, the Key to Health, Beauty, and Longevity. Modesty is not even what you eat, but even what we eat affects us and how we look at life and the things that in the decisions that we make. So you can have this book. Both books I have available if you want both of them for the price of this book. So this one is free. If you want to go to my website and get the book, you'll get both of them for the price of this book, if you choose to do that. Again, I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm trying to impart to you what I have now, and if you want to go deeper into it, then you'll get the book. So brothers and sisters, I want to end it on this note. We think we have a choice in obeying the Messiah and the directives he's given us. We have not a choice. When the attack on the domestic life occurs and it's very imminent, then separation will take place. And God has already decided who is coming with him for now and who will be left to turmoil until they get it right. In Surah 57, verse 13, it says, "On the day when the hypocrites, men and women, will say to those who believe, 'Wait for us, that we may borrow from your light,' it will be said, 'Turn back and seek a light.' Then a wall with a door in it will be raised between them. Within it, within the door, shall be mercy, and outside of it, chastisement." So we are facing a terrific chastisement very soon. And that chastisement will get underway on the departure of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, because we have not listened well. As a people, and this nation has not listened well. But God's mercy will be present, and we can, all of us, if we choose to, in various times along this whipping, can decide to get it straight, and then Allah will decide if he wants to lighten up on us individually and lighten up on our people, the black people, the original people of the Western Hemisphere. Or America in the entire world. The thought that I had was looking at the Latinos, Hispanic, the Native Americans, and the black people of America, who are all the original people of the Western Hemisphere. We would like to believe that we have a different culture because we have a Native American culture. We have a Latino and Hispanic culture. We would like to believe that we have some cultural differences that sets us apart from one another. But if we look across the spectrum here in America and even going into Mexico, there's a common culture, which is filth and indecency. Let's just be real. In self-hatred, in the hatred of the light over the black. These problems have to be solved. So on our way to 10-10-15, we have to be honest. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is rallying us on the theme of justice or else. But we have to come straight forward and look at what our mortal enemies have done to us and what we still accept. There's still Mexicans that don't like black people. There's still black people that don't like Mexicans. There's still Native Americans that don't like either. And when I say still, some by the millions. So we have a lot of cleaning up to do before we can become this unified people. But it begins with the correct understanding of the Holy Quran and the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So I wanted to make that point clear. We have to look at, what culture are we really practicing? And it is the European culture of decadence, filth, and indecency and debauchery. So finally, brothers and sisters, we're going to end this message, and I want to end it on some pictures. Pictures speaks louder than 1,000 words. So here's the first picture. It's going to be followed by pictures of the Messiah, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Now, as we look at this picture, who other than me is tired of looking at this? Here we have the head of Christendom of Europe, which is on record of having pillaged the whole world for the last 500 years. That's the one in the middle. And then around him, we have maybe a would-be person running for president, the vice president. I don't know who the other two people are. I see that we have the head of the Republican Party who has just resigned. But that's a picture that could make somebody want to throw up. Because here is a government that is on record as having, again, pillaged, robbed, raped, ravaged, in a pope that represents a Christendom that didn't come over here to help black people out, still have not done anything like that. Just went down to South America and apologized for what the church did and the atrocities and massacres, not what Jesus did, because Jesus' teachings didn't represent the church. The church did that pretending to represent Jesus. Well, I'm tired of looking at a picture like that. I think that time, I know that time is over. And I think God has already judged that before I was born. But I just wanted to show you that because that is what is ending right now. So they can take their last hurrah. Now here's the Messiah. Not among just a few cronies, but among the people. Among people who have been despised and rejected. Among people who have been brutalized and tormented to this day, at this hour, whose pain goes deep, are people who need to be healed. And he's bringing everybody together. People who are Jewish, who are trying to follow the law of Moses. Native Americans, Latinos and Hispanic, whichever we want to call them, but of the original people, which is the proper word, and even some whites who want to see justice done. That is the difference between what we see in a man who has always demonstrated for 60 years. Popes come and go with different agendas. Some decide to do things that other popes before them have not done. Some don't even come and visit nobody. Many do make a visit here in America, but what do we know about Pope Francis or any pope? Unless you're paying real good attention to what they're doing elsewhere throughout Europe. But we know a man who has been among us for 60 years, championing freedom, justice, and equality, giving counsel to the United States government in their wayward ways of folly and filth and warmongering, who traveled the world warning Arab countries and African countries that you can unite and pull yourself together and go and lift your people up, who's talked to men and women in leadership all over the world, giving them wise counsel, even to the extent where he has neglected his own health. So that, brothers and sisters, that is our Messiah and the world's Messiah. So I'll end on that thought. Let us keep our minds alert. Let us clean up. And we are always on war footing because we have enemies who want to see us off the face of the earth. But God wants to see them off the face of the earth. And I know, and we know God will win. I greet you until next time. Allah willing. Assalamu alaikum.